What's going on, everybody? We have the meta snapshot for patch 13.13b. There isn't too much change from last week. It's pretty much just Ionia and Azir, but there are other things to play still. Obviously, for the legend tier list, just keep playing Ezreal, clearly the best one. Some people are playing with Aurelion Soul. It's called like Dragon King or something like that, and you just power level and play like a bunch of crazy stuff, but it hasn't really taken off that much. It's more of like a fun thing to do, but never really caught on in terms of like actually climbing. But the best comps to climb right now, it's going to be Challengers, which is pretty much Ionia's, but a different version. Strategist Azir and Ionia. Like those two comps, Azir and Yasuo Kaisa, is going to be your bread and butters of this patch still. Void Kaisa is still pretty solid in the S tier, and we'll go over all the little differences between all of these because I may have confused some people right there. But in the A tier, Noxus Reroll, still a very good high roll comp. Sorcerers, pretty decent. Zed Reroll, pretty good. Deadeye, it's alright. Not my first choice, but Garen Reroll, there's still some spots for it. Yordle Reroll, that's with Tristana, still pretty good. Ravenous Warwick, completely broken if you get it, but you can only play it when you get the augment. So this is like S++ tier if you get it, but like it's too hard to get, you know? Shurima, it's decent, but the strategist version's better. Multicaster, whatever. B tier, we have Ekko Reroll, still a little playable. Gunners, only playable with Piltover. Kalista, why aren't you playing Ionia? Karma, why are you not playing Ionia? Riftwalker Kassadin, decent, but not as good as the Warwick one. Double Trouble Taliyah, pretty decent. Rogue Reroll, Demacia, and Built Different. Built Different kinda right now. I wouldn't really put that on my top list. But Legend tier list, we have Ezreal and everything else after that. So like really just play Ezreal. This is like S++ tier, and everything else is just beneath it. Just trust me on it. It's so easy. The first two augments of Ezreal, you just pretty much pick all the time. Not all the time, but like 95% of the time. And then you're good to go from there. Check out the augment guide for the early game if you don't know what to do, but it's pretty much that. But let's go into the tier list and how to play everything. So first thing I want to go over is the challenger build. So there's a popular build coming out right now, which is pretty much the Ionia build. You're going for Shen, Yasuo, and Kaisa. So the roll down's the same bullcrap. The only difference is that this comp is a lot more affordable to play because you're running Samira. And you're also running Warwick. Those are very two low-cost units. Now, you may be asking, why would you run this instead of Ionia? Well, you could run the 6 Challenger and then level up to play random good stuff in the late game, such as like Heimerdinger, Cassante. Maybe you get like a Spatula for Belveth or something, or Aatrox. Literally, in the late game, you could just play anything because this is a much cheaper build to play than everything else, or you just have more gold to hit 2-star Kaisa, 2-star Shen, 2-star Yasuo, which are the only units that matter in the Ionia comp anyways, or like 95% of the comp at least. So that's why people are playing 6 Challengers, so just wanted to point that out there. It's pretty much the same thing as Ionia, but I kind of wanted to differentiate between the two versions there. So you pretty much just play it the same exact way as the Ionia comp, so we'll get into that later. Actually, let's do that now, but this is the base Ionia comp. It's just 6 Ionia, 4 Challenger. There are a couple other different versions. Some people like using Karma Carry. If you've been watching my stream, you'll know that I love Karma Carry, but since I play that so much, we'll include a different picture here. This is just one more focus on the classic trio of Shen, Yasuo, and Kaisa. But pretty much, if you don't get 2-star Kaisa, just play Karma instead and just put items on Karma. She'll carry you through the early parts of stage 5, which is good enough for like top 6 or top 5 in most games. And then if you do eventually get the Kaisa, you'll get your top 4s and whatever. Itemization is pretty important. Edge of Night is by far the best item on Yasuo because he just lives for such a long time. Shen, just generic tank items. It really doesn't matter. It's just leftover items on Shen and then AP items on Kaisa. So Kaisa can use pretty much any item combo. I haven't really actually felt any difference between any of the items she normally uses. So if you have like Gwynsu's, Giant Slayer, Gunblade, Deathcat, Jeweled Gauntlet, Static Ship, Archangel's Guardbreaker, Morel, and Namekon, any combination of these 3 items, also Spear of Shojin, I need to write that down, but any combination of 3 of those items work really well. Like I've done all sorts of weird stuff, and obviously are some slightly better than others, of course, but you pretty much just slam the item as early as you can so that you get more value from it, and then just go from there. Like, I really have not felt a difference. For Yasuo, AD is his best stat, so just build a lot of sword items on him. Shen, generic tank, and then Ahri, blue buff is by far her best item. After that, just put whatever AP on her, doesn't really matter. If you want like a static Shiv machine, Kalista has really high attack speed, so you could kind of use her. But pretty much in the early game, use Set as your tank item holder, use Zed as your Yasuo item holder, use Karma as your Kaisa item holder, and Jhin can hold like anyone's items really, because you could sell them and find a new one. But we also do have a game replay of this coming out, I believe, tomorrow if you want to get the ins and outs of the Ionia comp. So subscribe for that if you have not already. Let's move back up into the Strategist Azir comp, because this is the other big comp of the patch. So Strategist Azir, legends are outdated. It's just Ezreal every time. So like I will include legends that I think are good for each of the comps on the right hand side as much as we can. But like if you look at the legend tier list, pretty much you look at that a little more than the ones on the comps. But this comp just revolves around Azir, Lux, and Jarvan. Jarvan is lucky because he doesn't need any items to really pop off. I prefer having like a Protector's Vow on Jarvan, but it's by no means mandatory. But Azir, Rageblade plus 2 random items, gonna be good. Lux, any 2 items will work as well. Again, with Lux, I built many different 2-item combinations on her. And yeah, some are slightly better than others, but it really doesn't matter. You just need 2 items on her and then she's gonna be good to go. It's much more important for me this patch to just save HP by building every item I possibly can. So if the item is even remotely usable on any of these 2 comps, just build them right away and then just go from there. For early game item holders, Cassiopeia, Malzahar is pretty good. You could go from like a Sork build into the Strategist Azir and Lux build pretty easily, because you run Swain and Lux, and the items are the same. But your main tank is going to be either Jarvan or Nasus, pretty much whoever you 2-star first. So if you 2-star Nasus first, itemize him. If you 2-star Jarvan first, itemize him. But it's pretty simple to play both these comps. You just level up to level 7 and roll down and buy all the 4-cost units, and then whichever 4-cost units you hit more of, play either this comp or the Ionia comp. That's really all there is to it for most of the patch. And for most people, that'll be more than enough. So we technically could end the video right here, but we'll go over all the other comps because I know a lot of you all want to play more than just 2 comps. So Void Kaisa, pretty solid build, but it's a little tough because Kaisa is very contested. So if there are a lot of Ionia players, you can't just go for Void Kaisa unless you have Emblem. So this comp is like maybe low A tier without +1 Void, but if you ever do have +1 Void, it's like low S tier. Or like mid S tier, let's say. It also depends on how early you hit it, and there are a couple of different options. You could play Kaisa with 6 Bruiser, so if you get +1 Bruiser, or if you get Scion early, you could play her in the same build, except instead of 6 Void, you drop down to 3, play 6 Bruiser, and then add in random units. Or you could play her in the Void build, and then hopefully get to 8 Void. Pretty decent build, and it's just good because Kaisa is pretty strong and you're abusing like a +1 Void synergy because these augments are just really good in the early game. So it is like semi-forceable from the start. But item holder is going to be Malzahar, going to hold all your AP items for Kaisa. I feel like in this version, the items on Kaisa are a little more important than the Kaisas in the other builds, like Ionia, because in this one, you don't have that many challengers, so I do like having the Rageblade on my Kaisa so that she could kind of like stack up throughout the fight and get a bunch of attack speed. I think healing's more important on her in this build too, because she's really your only source of damage, so she really needs to stay alive. So like Rageblade, Hextech Gunblade +1 damage item gonna do really good on her. Moving on into the A tier, Noxus Reroll. This is a really 1st or 8th comp. I played this comp a bunch and I either win the game without even playing, or I get 7th. Because you need to hit those 3-star 3 costs, and you need good augments, and you need to hit good items. So items really, really matter on Darius and Katarina, and in an Ezreal meta where there are a ton of items, you really want to get perfect items on Katarina and Darius, and every item that isn't is kind of like a wasted item. So this comp ends up wasting a lot of items because you only need 6 completed items, and you normally get around like a lot more than that, maybe around 9 or 10 if you take both of the Ezreal augments in stage 2 and stage 3. So those other items need to be support items, and sometimes you just get like too many carry items, for example, and you don't have enough units to kind of put them on. But Darius and Katarina, once they're 3-starred, they just completely roll over everyone. What I like to do with this build is stabilize on stage 3 too, and get 2-star Darius, 2-star Katarina during a roll down there at level 6. To get them to 2-star, and that way you get a bunch of Noxus stacks, which hopefully carry you on into the rest of the game. My tip for early game for Noxus Reroll is to build Titan's Resolve and prioritize that item because both Darius and Katarina can use it. And you could also flex the Zed Reroll build, which we'll get into right here. But for this leveling pattern, you want to do 3-cost reroll, so do the level 6 roll down to stabilize if you're low health, and then get to level 7 and do a 3-cost reroll. But let's skip the Sorcerers build, let's go on into the Zed Reroll build, because this build is very similar. It pretty much uses the same units, except instead of putting the AD items on Darius, you put them on Zed. And for this, you just do a 2-cost reroll. Zed's going to be the main carry by far, put as many Slayers in as possible, and if you ever get Slayer spat, it is exponentially better. You could run like 5 Slayers. I believe you could get to 6 if you run Kale and Aatrox, plus a Spatula, but like that's a little hard to hit. But just having one of the Slayer Spatulas is already really, really powerful, and you just stay level 6 until you hit Zed 3-star and everyone else as well. Essentially, this comp's really good because you stabilize at stage 4 with Zed 3, and then you hopefully try to win the game with like Katarina 3 or Darius 3 later on. But this and the Noxus build are very similar builds because they kind of use the same items and the same starts. But let's move back into the Sorcerer builds. So Sorcerers are like pretty popular now. It's really just another Lux build that you play if you didn't hit Azir. And if you didn't do that, you use like Vel'Koz or Ahri as your secondary carry. A pattern right now with Ezreal being in the meta is that duo carries or like even trio carries are really popular right now because you just have so many items. So those comps are doing really well. So essentially, if you hit Lux, but you don't hit all the other Azir stuff and Shurimas and Strategists, this is the build you're going to go for. 6 Sorcerer is probably the biggest power spike. If you get a +1 Sorcerer, that's when I would keep this build into the late game. If not, you pivot out of this to go into a different build super late game. But you could use this to kind of stabilize during stage 4 and even stage 5 and do decently well, especially if you have +1 Sorcerer. But 6 Sorcerer is probably the most important point to be at because that's when the Sorcerer proc hits 2 different targets instead of just 1. So having an emblem or having like a heart makes this comp like a lot better. But let's move on into the next build, which is going to be the Deadeye comp. Deadeye is definitely much weaker now, but it's so easy to hit because who on earth is playing Aphelios and Urgot right now? So what you want to do is do a fast 8 instead of a roll down on 7. So when you're playing the Ionia and the Azir comp, you want to get to level 7 and roll down as fast as possible because people are going to be taking all the 4-cost units that you want, namely Shen, Yasuo, Kaisa, Azir, Lux, Nasus, and Jarvan. So what does that do? It leaves everyone else really easy to hit. So when people reach level 7 on 4-1 and roll down, some people even do it on like 3-5 or 3-7. And some people hit, some people won't. But then what you do is level up to level 8 on maybe 4-2 after everyone already rolled down. And then you do your roll down there with level 8 odds. You hit Aphelios 2, you hit Urgot 2, you hit Sejuani 2. Might not hit Shen 2, but the other ones are pretty realistic to hit. You could even flex this with the Gunner build and go for Zeri because she uses the same items as Aphelios, and you get your free comp there. Obviously, in the late game, you are going to get outscaled once the other people get their units up to 2-star, but there is a thing as like 3-star Aphelios really carrying fights because I know it seems like hard to hit, but I promise you, it happens more often than you think because all the other 4-costs are taken out of the pool, so it's much easier to hit all your own guys. But 2 or 4 Deadeye will do. Freljord is going to be like the carry trait, I would say. Freljord's like a support trait, but it just completely like changes the tempo of the fight because it just slows the enemy team down so much in so many ways. So +1 Freljord, definitely very good in this build, but 3 is good enough there. Standard leveling, obviously, but like fast 8 favored. Because again, the reason we talked about before, everyone's hitting all the 4-costs at level 7, so you go to level 8, get better odds, and like play legendaries plus hit yours for free. Next up, we have Garen Reroll. You kind of need perfect items for this, so maybe Twisted Fate would be a little bit better for this. But you pretty much just do 3-cost reroll, get Garen 3-star, and hope that he kind of wins the fight. I think there are better options to go for on this patch, but he's still definitely like semi-viable. But definitely stick to the S tiers. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention at the very top. Let's say you are playing like 20 games on the patch. Maybe like 15 of those are going to be Azir or Ionia Yasuo. So all those other 5 games, that's where you can kind of explore the other stuff. That's how I'm going to play at least. You can feel free to copy that if you want. But if you want to just play other comps, just to play other comps, it's fine. For example, the next comp we're going into, Yordle Reroll. Some people just only play Lee Sin Legend, which is really good for rerolling, and if you do that, obviously just play Yordle Reroll every single game. This comp is actually still pretty solid. I see it, but it's weird. Sometimes I see people hit this comp really early, like in stage 4, but then they still lose to people for some reason. But then I see this in the late game destroying other people for, again, no apparent reason. If I had to guess, it might be because of the augments. Maybe they take a lot of good combat augments and that kind of helps their team kind of beef themselves up to kind of compete. But once you hit the Triss 3 and then it turns into 4-star later on, like there isn't that much more you could do to kind of improve the team. You do level up to play 4 Gunner, but it's not like that big of an upgrade. So I don't think like the late game cap, apart from hitting Heimerdinger and getting Heimerdinger upgrades, is necessarily that high. But just do 1 cost reroll pattern for this. Go for Maokai, Viego, Tristana, and Poppy 3-star. And that's really all you have to do there. I would only pursue this comp if in the early game, stage 2-1, you have either a reroll augment, pretty much just any augment that's good for reroll, like Golden Ticket, Trade Sector, things like that. And if you have around like 5 or 6 of the units already. So if you have like 2 copies of Tristana, a 2-star Maokai, and 1 Poppy, like that would be like an okay start for it. Obviously, the more the better. But let's move on into the next build, which is the Ravenous Hunter Warwick. You can only play this with the Ravenous Hunter augment, but if you hit it, it's pretty much auto win, like S++ tier. But because you need the augment, you're rarely gonna play this. Like I've been trying to play this all patch, and I've been playing a lot of TFT. Probably played like 50 games this patch already or something like that. Maybe even more. I have not gotten a single Ravenous Hunter Warwick augment on stage 2. So it's very rare that you're going to play this, but if you do, just go for it. Warwick's just going to carry. You just want to do 2 cost reroll for this comp and get Warwick 3-star. If you get Set 3-star, great. If not, who really cares? Warwick's the only person that matters on your team. So you want to buff him up with as many challengers and juggernauts as possible. Items on him, the only one that really matters, I think, is QSS. Apart from that, there are 2 different paths you could kind of go. You could go like RFC and then another damage item, or you go a healing item such as like Bloodthirster or Hand of Justice or Edge of Night, like some sort of survivability item instead of the RFC, and then 1 other damage item there. So pretty much QSS, another survivability item, and then damage. But the exact specific items don't really matter. So it really just depends on what items you're kind of hitting that game. That's really all there is to this comp. If you get much later into the game and you somehow get Kaisa and Yasuo as well, definitely itemize them. If not, you could also go like 4 Juggernaut, because Warwick's also a Juggernaut. But it really just depends on what you hit, and honestly, it doesn't really matter because Warwick's gonna 1v9 every single fight. Next up we have is the Shurima build. By the way, if you want to read like the full how to play sections, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. We update this meta snapshot every single Friday. But maybe we skip next Friday because this is a 3-week patch, and I don't think much is going to change between now and next week. But let's move on into the next build, which is the Shurima build. So Shurima is pretty much the same as the Strategist build, except you're not running Lux. And because of the Ezreal meta, where you get a ton of items, you don't have enough units to kind of itemize in the Shurima build. It's really only Azir and like some tank items that you care about. I guess if you get into the super late game, Cassante likes items, but you get Cassante items off late game carousels or the item anvils. But Akshan, he's decent, he's okay, but he's not going to do anything crazy. So that's why the Shurima build is significantly worse than the Azir Lux build with Strategist. You can still go for Shurima if you get +1 Shurima. For example, if we go all the way back up to the top, where we have the Strategist build, if you have like a +1 Shurima, or you're on a portal which gives you an emblem and you want to do Shurima, you could just play 5 Shurima, just take out one of the Strategists, either Teemo or Swain, and then play Akshan or Taliyah, and then just play 5 Shurima like that. But you don't really need to go up to 7 because you really want to fit Lux in your team if you do end up getting her. But that's pretty much all there is to it for the Shurima build. Standard leveling, but there's just better options. Multicaster reroll, it's just 3 cost rerolls, Sona and Vel'Koz. They're definitely much better reroll comps to play right now, but it's definitely still viable if you get them for free. I'm going to go over the rest of the Beak tier comps like kind of really quickly because again, probably like 75% of your game should just be either Ionia or the Strategist build, and then the other 5 games should probably be some of the stuff higher end on the A tier. But Ekko reroll still okay if you get it for free. He's not really contested either, and there is a couple of other 3 cost rerolls right now, so you could kind of hit him for free. Gunners only play this with the Piltover build in the early game, so if you get like a big T-Hex and you perfect loss streaked early on, you could kind of play this build. I've actually seen it do really, really well, but it's just hard to pull off, and sometimes you go 8th because you can't cash out. Kalista reroll, again, just play Ionia instead. Karma reroll, same thing, just go, instead of 6 Invoker, just go 6 Ionia. It's a shame, but that's just how the patch is right now. Riftwalker Kassadin, It's like much weaker than the Warwick build, but you still could get it. Like JG, Hodge, and then third item, pretty much any of them will do. Some people like going double Hodge, some people like going QSS. QSS allows them to stack up, Hodge allows them to deal more damage or heal a bit more. They pretty much do the same thing, but you really don't care about anyone else on this team other than Kassadin, and then you just play as many Bastion as possible. 2-cost reroll is going to be the way to go because he's a 2-cost unit, so just slow roll at level 6 and then power level up after you hit him 3-star and play random units after that. Really good on maps where you get little champion duplicators. So if there's a portal that gives you that, or if there's an augment that gives you that, definitely pick those because those would be pretty good. Taliyah Double Trouble Reroll. I will talk about this comp a little bit more than the other ones because the Double Trouble comp is very, very powerful. You just need to get Double Trouble and like a decent amount of Taliyahs early. You just stay level 6 and play all the 2 costs. Another really good augment on this is the, what is it called? Like 2 healthy or something like that, because you play a ton of 2-cost units and you get a bunch of HP that way. So if you get Double Trouble, or if you get 2 healthy, you could kind of try for this comp. But at level 6, you just play 2 Taliyahs, 2 sets, a Teemo, and a Swain, and as you level up, you play the other units that you 3-starred in Double Trouble, or you could just play a couple more tanks just so it buys Taliyah more time to really pop off. The next one we have up is Rogue Reroll. It's kind of the same. It revolves a lot around like Zed and Katarina, but I think the Slayer build's a little bit better. Demacia, yeah, don't play this comp right now. Built different. It's okay. I'd say if you're in plat or gold or below, built different, still pretty good. If you're in like diamond or higher, I wouldn't play built different. And I'm talking about built different 3-star. The 2-star one, probably no one should play. I think it's pretty weak right now, but built different 3, if you're in like plat or gold, I think that's like the sweet spot to play built different. But diamond, it kind of like gets outshined by all the Ionia and Azirs, and anything above that, same thing. After that, like, yeah, C tier, who cares? Overall, like, yeah, just keep playing like these 3 comps up here. Like Challengers is really just like the new version of Ionia. It's just a little bit cheaper. That's the only difference. So it's easier to hit. Personally, my favorite, if you had to pick between Azir or Ionia, I'm more of an Ionia player, but I just find it more difficult to hit the Azir build. But I think the Azir build in a 1v1 scenario, on average, is a little bit stronger. There's a lot of like random fight interactions that need to take place. For example, Yasuo sometimes hits perfect targets. Jarvan sometimes misses the corner units. Sometimes Kaisa dashes like an idiot. So there's a lot of things to kind of unpack there on like the exact like which one is actually better. It obviously changes based on like how the fights go and how positioning goes. But I think on average, like Azir, higher cap, but more difficult to hit. But that's pretty much going to be the tier list for this week and next week. I don't think we're going to do one next week because I don't think it's going to change much. But if it does, we will be coming back. But I will probably be streaming, hopefully like 4 days a week. I did say like 5 days a week, but I don't think I can actually do that just because it takes up a lot of time. But twitch.tv/BunnyMuffins LOL for all the live streams. And we will be doing more like game reviews, hopefully later on. I think that's going to be my focus on the next couple of videos. So definitely subscribe if you have not already to get notified on that. And I hope to see you all next time.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe. And of course, smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.